Hello, welcome to my channel, The Simple Mama, and my name is Sinead, and I am a homeschool mum to 6 children here in Australia. I am a content creator based on motherhood and homeschooling and child training here on my YouTube channel, as well as on my blog, thesimplemama.com. And today I want to talk about my homeschool 2024 year, what I'm teaching, what I'm using, and the systems that I'm implementing in order to get me through this year successfully. So let's talk about it. Okay, so today I want to talk about something that I didn't talk about in the last video. Even though the last video was a homeschool with me, I intended to, and I did sit down and actually go through my new homeschool routine, what I'm doing in 2024, my homeschool curriculum, and I was sitting there chatting away with a big old piece of blueberry skin in my teeth. And I was editing, and I was like, I'm real, but I'm not that real. So I just left that out. I just didn't, no one had to see. It was just, I think it was in my smoothie. And yeah, anyway, I try really hard today to try and keep it really informal. No, really not informal, really informative, as well as informal, so that I can share with my homeschool 2024 my routine, my rhythm, and what I'm using, because I think it will be quite helpful to a lot of people, because I'm coming from a place of a mum who is really, really busy. And I feel like the next sort of 2 to 3 years of my homeschooling are going to be, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think they're going to be my hardest, because, or at least not my hardest, but my most full on, because as each year ticks over from now on, I'm going to be adding another homeschool student to the table. So currently I have 4, and I'm still teaching 3 sort of how to read. One, my eldest reads, doesn't need teaching. My second eldest, he's coming along now quite well, but still needs that really consistent, everyday, in your face reading lesson, but hopefully not for too much longer. And then I have 2 who are just starting. So I have one, and he's sort of mastering from last year too, like his sounds of his letters and the phonics kind of thing. That's how I teach, through phonics. And then I have my girl who is sort of in year 1, just started year 1 this year, and she's really just sort of starting the fun aspect of, A's and B's and the sounds and all kind of thing, but a lot through painting and drawing, but still only just starting off that journey of learning to read. But then I also have a 4-year-old who isn't schooling this year, but then next year he may be, although it's a boy, and I do find that boys are usually better reading at like 6 to 7, and he's 5 like in December of this year, so maybe even next year will still be a super casual year for him, but it's still something, it's still brain space, it's still in my mind that eventually I'm going to have 5 children at the homeschool table. And I do have a bit of a gap between him and my baby, so it won't be quite so carry on, but at least always have 3 readers for the next 3 years. And that's a lot when you've got also dealing with someone who's almost in high school. Then I'm also trying to teach the second one, who should be phasing out and approaching high school. Both completely different style learners. I can tell all of my 3 younger ones are completely different style learners. So that's really full on. That means I have to be really effective with my time and really, really consistent. And so when it comes to planning curriculum and what I decided to use, what I decided to teach, those things, because when you're choosing a curriculum, you need to ultimately ask yourself the question of, what do my children need? So when I look at my children, when I spend a lot of time with my kids, conversing with them, teaching them, I can sort of learn their homeschool styles. I can learn their learning styles, but I also need to go, okay, you're better at this and you're weaker at this. And there's a lot of tweaking and sort of taking the time to understand your student. And I do understand too, that comes with time. That comes with a lot of just getting in and sort of failing for the first few years. Not ultimately failing, but you will have a lot of knowledge gaps, I think, in the first few years if you're teaching homeschooling, because you simply don't know that they're there until you see them in the past and you're like, And then you get better at predicting that. You get better at sort of going with the flow and understanding where your child needs help and understanding where they're going to need help and just understanding where they should be. That comes with time. And I feel like I've been homeschooling now for Williams and years, so for 6 years. And I feel like I'm only just starting to get a grasp of that time and of that knowledge, and of going, okay, I think I'm getting a little bit better at predicting what my kids are going to need from me this year, and not just relying on a homeschool curriculum or relying on myself and all my planning to provide for that, because it's strange, but you can just have knowledge gaps everywhere that you can't predict. And it's hard to explain, but I'm sure anyone who's done homeschooling for a few years can understand that you might teach one child really well, and that's more because of their learning style that you didn't understand. You sort of thought you were doing a great job, and you did as well, but then you'll have a different child who's a different learning standard and a different learning style, and suddenly they're not learning the same, and you don't know what's happened, and did you miss things, did you forget things, and then you start to second guess. And I think now that I have 4 at the homeschool table, and I've been doing this for 6 years, which isn't long, I feel like I can answer these questions a little bit better. And so, ultimately, when I sat down at the start of this year and I said to myself, what do my children need? I came up with answers, this one needs this and this one needs that. But ultimately, what all of my children need is time from me. They needed one-on-one time. They needed more consistency, and I need to be more effective with my time when I'm at the homeschool table. So with those answers, I figured the biggest one being they need more one-on-one time. I think last year I really struggled with one-on-one time with my children when it came to homeschool, and there's a lot of gaps because I just was doing school every day doing school, and I did feel like, a duck that's just going mad underwater. But when I got to the end of some months, I'd be like, I haven't actually sat down with you one-on-one for how many weeks now, I don't even know. That's not a good idea when you're teaching really young students. Group sessions and the whole morning basket thing, and that's a great idea, but your little ones need that one-on-one time. But once you get to where I am, and I've got 6 children and they're all young, that's really hard to try and manage having one-on-one time. So again, I did come up with a system for that, and so far it is working really, really well. So that was my question. What do my children need? And my answer was, I need to be consistent. They need one-on-one time, and I need to make my homeschool time really, really effective this year. And so I came up with a few things to help me fulfill those answers in 2024. All right, so the first thing I came up with was easy planning. Now, this isn't really new. I've been into easy planning before this. But I just knew 100% that even though I thought maybe I could fulfill my kids' knowledge and I could fulfill their needs maybe by me sort of taking more of that spattering of different things and pulling it all together, while I want to do that and I think I would enjoy doing that, I have to acknowledge that where I am this year anyway, I don't have the time and I don't have the mental space to take the time to do that. Because when you do that at the start of the year, that's one thing, the kids are all off school and you've got time to sit down, that's one thing. But to make sure that you're still on track, to keep yourself accountable, to be able to, you need to be able to assess where you are. Is it working? And if it's not working for one child or another, you need to be able to change and switch. And I just don't have the mental capability for that today or any day of this year. I don't think so. I came up with easy planning. So what that means is I've used curriculums which really have done all the planning for me. It's one of the reasons why, for example, I chose The Mystery of History, which is one of our group session curriculum books. It is done for me. It's lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3 lessons in a week. And then you just turn the pages. The activities are all there for every age group. It's easy. But then it's one of those great curriculums where it sparks a lot of conversation. We go Google things. There's so much more that comes from the page than just what is provided if you just give yourself time to talk about it, which I really enjoy. But at the same time, for me, there is zero effort when it comes to planning. The only thing that I try and do is 3 lessons a week. And if I do 3 lessons a week, I know we're moving ahead. I know that I can say, hey, sometimes I do need to be able to tell myself that at the end of this year, hopefully this book will be almost done, and I'm going to feel good about it. I'm going to feel good that even on the bad days and on the good days, we finish something, because that can go a long way to making you feel like you're not just going mad with homeschooling. And I knew that I needed that. So I use that. We also have the human anatomy, which is like a biology thing, which my eldest does. But I think I'm going to start incorporating that as a group session as well. So that sort of covers history, geography, and science. So if you're there trying to sort of tick boxes on subjects, doing those 2 books on group sessions, I really like, because it's planned out for you and you just turn the page and read information, and it's still in depth. It's still great information. I like just moving through the book, and I like just using that as my plan. I don't need to make a plan because the book is my plan. And so that's what I'm saying. I've gone for those kinds of books where all I really do is record. I record everything we learn. I keep notes. I take photos, all of that, because that's really nice to look back on. I'll actually make a whole school photo album this year, I think, because that's just a great way not only to say, if I had to prove that I've been homeschooling, I've been educating my kids, but also that it's just nice sometimes when you're actually having a really bad time with homeschooling. Like, one of the things that made me feel a lot better when I was at the start in February, when I was supposed to homeschool, but I sort of couldn't, and I didn't start, was I ended up going through my storage cupboards and I found all our old homeschool books from last year and the year before and the year before that. And I saw all the photos I'd taken, all the projects I'd laminated, all the writing books we'd kept, the maths books we kept. I found all my old diaries that I'd kept and written everything down. And I just made me realize that it's not, I think I was just overwhelmed. I was thinking of too much at once, and I wasn't just going, I need to take this day by day, and I need to figure out how I can just make each day effective. And I don't need to worry about tomorrow or the next day or the next week. Sometimes I just need to work on that day. And so that's why I thought, when I saw the mystery of history and the way that was laid out, I bought that immediately. And I also use Matthew C still. So Matthew C is still very much a part of our curriculum. I really enjoy that maths. So I now have 4 students doing Matthew C. And I still use the McGuffey's readers. I still think they are great readers. I have started to incorporate reading other little books, but really simple books, just to sort of expand the curriculum. And I have sort of learnt since my last curriculum sort of haul that I showed, I have learned how to incorporate the different primers together so that children do get different words and different things mixed in, and it just helps them to learn to read without so much memorizing the words. Because I did find that when you spend a long time on one reading lesson in order to master it, your children very quickly just memorize the page. And so when you're throwing in new information, it really makes them think about what they're reading, and I find that that's what really helps them move from that one particular lesson much quicker. So when it comes to curriculum, not much has changed really, because it's all still working really well for me. I don't have to change anything. You know, I would change something if it wasn't working, but so far it seems to be working. And I think it is also because the curriculum that I have chosen isn't set in stone with how it has to be taught. It's very open to interpretation on how you want to use it on your children and how you want to use it in your homeschool routine. So it's all up to me on what I do, what I teach, how effectively, how consistently, what I add, what I take away, where I start, where I stop. Nothing makes me feel like I'm behind either. If I decide to repeat a reading lesson like 20 times, there's no sort of this week or this day sort of in the curriculum that making me feel like, oh, we are like so far behind because the curriculum says so. I like to avoid curriculums like that. I don't like those ones where there's like week 3, day 7. I was like, no, I don't like this. I just want to open the page and I know where we are. But it's also there for me to use as a way to just keep turning pages and keep going through the year. All right, so the second thing that I've started to do, which I wasn't doing in the years previously, is more group session learning. I think you can call it, like roundtable learning and that kind of thing, where 3 days a week from Monday to Wednesday, I sit down usually at the time of 9:30. I have set that for myself usually, although in my last homeschool video, I did talk about how it's not always at 9:30, but 9:30 is usually the standard time to get our rhythm keeping our rhythm going. And 3 days a week we do that, and it usually is sit down, it's Bible reading, and then it's history, which has Bible in it too. So we might do our history lesson from the mystery of history, and then we might read some more Bible. But the history usually takes us a while because you're also sort of doing a bit of geography. You're going into maps and you're writing your own map and you're adding cities and towns. We're also Googling things, we're making things, we're drawing things. So the history lesson really takes us a lot of time. And what I also really like about it too is that I've got my year 6 student at the table and we have conversation that's in depth for him. I also have my year 1 sitting at the table, and she might just be coloring in as she listens to me read and listens to us talk, and she sees the pictures and she can sort of help do projects and things like that. But ultimately it means that all of my children I'm able to educate and include in conversation, include in teaching them things that I wouldn't have had the time to do one-on-one at their level. And so, I mean, it's really super common. It's not like a lot of homeschoolers teach this way because it is really effective. And so at the moment we're just doing the 3-day group sessions, which work really, really well, creates a lot of conversation. And we usually do that from around 9:30 to say 11:30, and then I sort of get up and make lunch, which leads me to the next thing that I have started for 2024. So the next thing I have begun in 2024 for being able to fulfill my children's needs in homeschooling is appointments. I have started to have appointments with my kids. These are one-on-one appointments. They're not really long. They're usually between 15 and 20 minutes long, maybe a bit longer for my older children, but for the younger ones, so my year 1 and my year 2 students, 20 minutes seems to be enough when it's one-on-one time, especially when they've already had the group session and they've already been sitting and listening to me. And so I decided to do appointments. I realized it was one of the only ways that I could actually go, okay, there is actually a time in my diary. There is an alarm that's going to go off on my phone to remind me that, say, 1 p.m. this day, I'm going to sit down with my year 1 student, with my girl, and I'm going to sit down and we're going to do letters. We're going to open her book. We're going to paint. We're going to talk. And I've got my recorded notes, so I know what I've been teaching her, and I may have going, hey, I'll actually write ahead too and say, okay, it's time for her to teach this. It's time for her to pick up this. Or how is she going with this and how she's going with that and what she wants to learn, what are the questions she's asking. I'll also even take notes on where she seems to thrive and where she doesn't really seem to like me teaching her in a certain way, because this year is really very experimental. It's the year when I push forward on certain things and I have to pull back, or I can keep going. And it's all about figuring out where they are, how they learn, and it's all about figuring out how far you can push them and how far you can challenge them, and then learning to go, okay, this challenge is a little bit too much. Let's pull back and let's wait. And this year you have to be really in tune with them, I think, and I've learned that. I've learned that a shorter session done consistently, so at least 2 to 3 times a week, is much more fruitful than hours and hours every day forcing them to learn a topic, because they simply don't remember it, they won't recall it, it's not interesting to them, and you have to instead go with a shorter burst of time. Well, I have found go with shorter bursts of time consistently, one-on-one, and I find that the rate that they learn at is quicker because they're genuinely interested and you can genuinely make a connection with their learning. And I find that that is what helps them to actually learn more effectively. So that is what I have incorporated in my homeschooling this year. With appointments too, I like to try and do 2 a day. So that means that if I do 2 a day, 4 days a week, that's 8 appointments, which means that all of my kids are usually getting 3 appointments a week, usually, off and on. It's a lot easier to have appointments with my eldest because his appointments at the moment are usually him reading aloud to me, or something like that. So I'll just be doing something like folding washing or something and he'll read, because I'm just trying to keep an eye on his vocabulary and how he's pronouncing and stuff like that. So as he's reading more novels and things. But yeah, for my younger ones, it's me usually teaching them something that is, something that you can't teach in a group lesson. So I find, for example, maths is something they can do a lot on their own, especially with the maths you see when they're little, there's a lot of blocks and things. And I do like to sort of teach them how to do each thing on their own. Obviously, I'm sitting right there, but it's just them going, I can do this. And, it's that real teaching them that self-learning aspect. And I find that maths is one of those things that we can sort of all do at the same time around the table. There's not that much help that really they need from maths. So that's the kind of thing that they can sit around and do, but they can't do their reading lesson. So it's usually me doing their reading lesson or a language lesson, intermixed with some, we'll do something fun to hang up on the fridge or make their own flashcards or something like that. And that is something that I do. Another thing that I want to note too about how I have changed a little bit from teaching to read is I have tried to get more creative with it, and that's where I do use these appointments in order for me to have the headspace and the time to do that. So at the moment, my creativity goes as far as painting, but I do find that, and this is not something that I actually started, this is something that my mum does a lot of, like when my kids go to her house and she might teach them things. They do a lot of painting. They do like filled books with sort of pictures and that as they talk. And I'm not hugely into that. Like I'm not that kind of learner, but I have had to learn to be able to teach my kids that way if they need it. And I have found that when it comes to teaching reading, where I used to be quite bland about it and just produce a flashcard and just go, this is the 3 sounds. And while I still do that because it still needs to be learned, I do try and really intersperse that with a lot of more creative things, like making their own flashcards. Maybe they're making their flashcard with a sound to a letter or a blend that they relate with more than what the flashcard offers. And that is something that I have learned in the last sort of year or so, that not only is it great for sort of that appointment style learning, but it's great for young learners. And while I know it's, again, everyone sort of knows that young learners thrive with that kind of learning, it is just really difficult for me because I'm not that kind of learner myself. And it is something that I've had to sort of get out of my comfort zone and teach that way. But I am seeing that it is very fruitful. So I'm kind of regretting that I wasn't willing to step out of my comfort zone a lot earlier. And that is another aspect of homeschooling. It's ultimately, I made a mistake. I should have probably done that earlier. Not that I beat myself up about it or anything like that, but that's where for me too, I'm going to go off on a bit of a rant now, but I see it a lot now. And is that I see women on, mothers on YouTube who homeschool, and they're selling their own curriculum or a book they wrote or a homeschool course, and they sell these things sometimes for big money. And then you read or you look into a bit more into their lives and what they're doing, and it's like their eldest is 7. And it's like you're selling a homeschool course and your eldest child is 7. It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be spending $600 on that course, because you may know a lot and maybe you're a homeschooler like me, but there's so many things that I have learned. Like you can't information, like I'm offering information, but it's free here on YouTube. And I only try and offer information for things that I learn, but then again, I'm always learning, so that's ridiculous anyway, because I'm not going to know the same things in 2 years. I'm not going to know the same things the next year. But that's the nice thing about it, is I can just update this every year and go 2024, 2025, and keep going with all the things that I have learned. And that is one of the great things about talking to each other as homeschoolers. You are going to learn so many new things. And there's nothing wrong with advice, and there's nothing wrong with, like I say, like just learning from other people and trying and adapting things into your life. But I don't like it when there's just people saying this system is just do my system and my homeschool course, and this is my curriculum for this and this and this. And then you look into their lives and there's just the whole YouTube homeschool videos is just rigged to sell the product because they're trying to make money. And I'm like, you unfortunately need to learn to make money somewhere else, because it's just ridiculous that you're selling these products as a mother, as a homeschooler who just doesn't have enough years under your belt. Even for me, I'm not selling any homeschool products. I'm not selling courses. Now, I'm sure I could probably make a course if I wanted to, and I could sell it, and I could just redo my YouTube just to make it so it looks like that course is just great. Like that would be pretty easy for me, and I could make money, but I'm not going to do that, because I just think I would have to pretty much redo that course every year as I learnt new things, and that course would look nothing like what it originally was in 10 years. But yet I was selling that as some kind of fix-all to some desperate person who was willing to put their money into my pocket. I'm not going to do that. And, you know, I'm not, obviously selling homeschool curriculum and all that is not wrong, but for, you know, I'm not, it's hard. Maybe I shouldn't have said that on YouTube. I don't know. But I just think if I'm going to buy, or even if I'm going to really take a lot of advice from someone, it's going to be from someone who's fairly seasoned. I like to watch what other people do. I like to watch how other people have their rhythms, and I like to watch what other people are doing when they have a lot of kids. That always interests me when it comes to homeschooling, because there's always something that you can learn from somebody else, even if it's just a little thing. But I'm not into these women who are selling these courses to make money. I think it is so wrong, because there must be so many women sucked into spending their money to think that that's going to fix their homeschool lives, that it's going to change their routine and make it all so good. And it doesn't, because you're still fundamentally learning how to do this right, and you have to just give yourself time for that. And, you know, I could have come up with appointments and, you know, more creative learning 3 years ago, and it would have been so good, because my kids probably would be a bit ahead now. But I didn't know that. I didn't learn that. And if I had have been selling curriculum back then I would have not been, then what would I would have sold? And it's one of those things where you just need years under your belt before I think you're qualified to make a curriculum and sell a course. So if you're in the market for buying those things, check out how long your homeschool person has been doing that. You know, if they've been homeschooling for like 12 years and they've got kids and their kids are successfully schooled, then yes, go ahead and buy that course. It's probably fruitful. But if they're not, I would steer clear, because it's not that they're wrong. It's just that they have so much more to learn. And I think that I'm not wasting my money on something that is all I'm really is investing in their learning. You know, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I did that in a course, but I don't do that anymore because it doesn't work. And that's another thing too. It works for them, doesn't work for you. It works for you, doesn't work for them. Homeschooling, you need to be able to embrace learning, and that is probably one of the hardest things to embrace in homeschooling, and it's one of the things that you don't want to admit to anybody else, because especially someone who doesn't homeschool. Usually as homeschoolers we can admit to each other that we need to learn, but no one wants to admit to someone else who's asking them, how do you homeschool and why do you homeschool, and, you know, can you offer your kids as good as the education system? You don't want to like scratch your head and go, hey, I don't know, I'm still learning. Like, no one wants to say that, but it's true. So embrace learning and embrace that every year I myself am going to update you on a new thing I'm doing, on something that's really working. And that's always going to change as my circumstances change and as my knowledge base changes. So another great thing that I wanted to mention is it's super, super budget friendly to do a reading lesson like this. You don't even need to be buying the flashcards and all of that if you don't have to. You can really, I think it'd be super effective, and something that I'm going to get into is to literally have my children make their own flashcards with their own association of the letter sound that is obviously correct. But I think not only would that be really fun, it would be a great way to record their learning. I think it would be just a great thing for me to keep in general for when they're all grown up and moved out. And not only that, it is a super budget friendly way to teach your children, and it is it's informative, it's fun, it's creative, it can look really pretty, your children will learn well from it. So if you're on a budget, which, you know, with homeschooling I am on a budget, I have a fairly small budget really compared to a lot of people for my homeschooling, made even harder because everything that I want comes from the US and I have to pay for shipping. And every time I go like add to cart and I go, you know, fill my details and go ship, sometimes the shipping will be more than the product. And I'm like, I can't do that. So I have to start all over again. It's very hard for me to find, like, even the mystery of history, very hard for me to find here in Australia. And also like the human anatomy course, really easy to go and get the whole, like you can get so many books from the Apologia website in America, but you can't get them here. So that's really frustrating here in Australia when you're looking for a good quality curriculum. They're all American and you have to pay an outrageous amount for shipping. So I have gone on a huge rant and I don't know where I was. I was up to appointments. So yes, we do appointments. All right, so the next thing I want to briefly mention is a bit more about our homeschool rhythm. I have mentioned it a little bit, but our homeschool rhythm is simple. It works for me. And as I always advocate, it must fit into your life, Your homeschool is part of your life, not your life part of your homeschool. We usually start at 9:30. That's usually the group sessions, stuff like that. I'm at the table. I'm usually sitting at the head of the table, and I pretty much don't get up until 11:30. So I'm there for 2 solid hours. My kids, on the other hand, they will rotate. Like, I'll say, okay, you know, especially for my little ones, they're only there for really the history and the Bible, and then after that, they can leave. If they've done their maths, they can leave. Then amongst my 2, we'll do maths, we'll do some reading, we'll do a spelling test. You know, we're just doing whatever. We just go through our books, whatever's coming up, and that's what I do for 2 hours. My 2 eldest boys, if they don't finish the work they have to do at the 2-hour time block, which they usually don't, they have to finish some more. So they may keep working alone until while I'm making lunch, or they may do some after lunch. And my kids have just walked in from outside, so I think that's pretty much the end of my filming. I hope this video was helpful. I'm sorry that it has been I have been interrupted a lot, so I'm hoping that it's still useful and that you can make sense of everything that I said. And until next time, bye.